Close your eyes and let your mind drift back to a world far removed from our own, a world of towering walls and golden domes, where the echoes of church bells mingled with the sounds of bustling marketplaces and the distant murmur of the sea. This is Constantinople in the spring of 1453, a city perched between two worlds, a bridge between East and West. For more than 1,000 years, it had stood as the capital of the Byzantine Empire, a jewel of culture and faith, its walls defying countless would-be conquerors. To those who lived within its gates, it was not merely a city. It was a symbol, a sanctuary, the last great bastion of the Christian East. By 1453, however, the Byzantine Empire was but a shadow of its former self. One stretching across vast territories, it now clung to a mere fragment of its former glory. Constantinople, surrounded on all sides by the rising power of the Ottoman Empire, stood alone, a solitary flame flickering against the darkness of an approaching storm. To the east, across the waters of the Bosphorus, a young and ambitious leader watched. Sultan Mehmed II, ruler of the Ottoman Empire, had a vision of uniting his realm and conquering the city that had eluded so many before him. For Mehmed, Constantinople was not just a prize. It was a key to the future, a gateway to empire. And so, in the spring of 1453, the stage was set for a confrontation that would echo across the centuries. On one side stood Constantine the Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor, a man of courage and faith who vowed to defend his city to the very end. On the other stood Mehmed II, a leader of boundless determination, commanding an army that seemed unstoppable. It is here, in this city of grandeur and desperation, that our story begins. As the days grow longer and the air warms with the promise of spring, the quiet streets of Constantinople stir with unease. The citizens know the danger that looms, yet they carry on, lighting candles in the great Hagia Sophia, tending to their markets, and casting weary glances toward the horizon. For tonight, we will walk those streets together. We will explore the walls that had stood for a millennium, and we will hear the whispers of a city on the brink of destiny. We will meet the leaders and armies who shaped this moment, and we will witness the fall of an empire that had endured since ancient Rome. But let us begin slowly, with the rhythm of history as our guide. Close your eyes and let the story of Constantinople carry you gently into the past. Imagine the grandeur of its golden gates, the distant hum of waves against its shores, and the quiet strength of a city preparing for its final stand. This is the fall of Constantinople, the end of the Byzantine Empire, and the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the world. Let us take this journey together. Chapter 1. Constantinople, the jewel of the East. Close your eyes and let your imagination take you to Constantinople in its final days, a city standing at the crossroads of continents, time, and destiny. As spring envelops the land in gentle warmth, the waters of the Bosphorus sparkle under the golden light of dawn, cradling the city like a protective embrace. It is here, on this triangular peninsula, that one of the most extraordinary cities in history continues to defy the odds. Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, had once been the center of the world, a beacon of power, faith, and culture. It had been founded over 1,000 years earlier by Emperor Constantine the Great, who envisioned a city that would rival the grandeur of ancient Rome. Situated at the meeting point of Europe and Asia, Constantinople grew to become not just a political capital, but a thriving hub of trade and innovation, its influence stretching across continents. Its walls were legendary, known as the Theodosian Walls. They had stood for nearly 1,000 years as a testament to human ingenuity, stretching over 4 miles and built in 3 layers: a deep moat, an outer wall, and an inner wall. They were designed to repel even the most determined attackers. Towers dotted the walls at regular intervals, providing strategic vantage points for defenders. For centuries, these defenses had thwarted invaders, from the Huns to the Avars to the Arabs. They had earned Constantinople its reputation as an unconquerable fortress. But the city was more than its defenses. It was a mosaic of cultures and religions, a place where East met West. Imagine walking through its streets in 1453. The air is alive with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares in a multitude of languages, Greek, Italian, Arabic, and Turkish among them. Silk from China glimmers in the sunlight. Spices from the East Indies fill the air with their heady aroma, and jewels from Africa shine in the hands of traders. The city's markets, known as bazaars, are bustling with activity, their stalls overflowing with treasures from every corner of the known world. At the city's heart lies the Hagia Sophia, a masterpiece of architecture and a symbol of faith. Its massive dome, soaring high above the skyline, seems to defy gravity, an engineering marvel unmatched in its time. Inside, the walls glisten with mosaics of gold and precious stones, depicting serene faces of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints. The faint glow of candles flickers across these sacred images, creating an atmosphere of divine serenity. For the Byzantines, the Hagia Sophia was not merely a building. It was the spiritual center of their empire. It had witnessed coronations, funerals, and celebrations. Its very stones seemed to hum with the collective prayers of generations. To stand within its walls was to feel the weight of history, a connection to something eternal. Yet by 1453, Constantinople was a city under siege, not yet by armies, but by the passage of time. Once the heart of a vast empire, the Byzantine state had been reduced to a fragment of its former glory. The population, which had once swelled to over 1 million, now barely exceeded 50,000. The great forums and aqueducts that had served the city in its prime were crumbling, their grandeur fading into memory. Still, the spirit of Constantinople endured. Its people, though diminished in number, clung to their traditions and faith. They were Byzantines, heirs to the Roman Empire, and they knew that their city was more than a collection of buildings. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the endurance of their culture and religion. Beyond the city walls, the world was changing. In the West, the Renaissance was blossoming, breathing new life into art, science, and philosophy. In the East, the Ottoman Empire was rising, its power expanding with every passing year. Constantinople, caught between these two worlds, stood as a beacon of the old order. But its isolation was becoming ever more apparent. To the north and east, the lands surrounding Constantinople had fallen to the Ottomans. The once thriving trade routes that had enriched the city were now under Ottoman control, and the Byzantines found themselves increasingly reliant on their Italian allies for supplies and support. Genoese and Venetian merchants sailed into the city's harbors, their ships laden with goods, and their presence a reminder of Constantinople's dependence on foreign aid. The city's emperor, Constantine V Palaiologos, embodied the spirit of his people. Though his resources were limited and his empire reduced to a fraction of its former size, he refused to yield. Constantine was a man of courage and conviction, a leader who carried the weight of his ancestors' legacy on his shoulders. He knew that the odds were against him, yet he remained steadfast in his commitment to defend his city. As spring unfolded, the citizens of Constantinople went about their daily lives with a sense of quiet resolve. Farmers tended to their fields beyond the walls, their work a vital lifeline for the city. Within the gates, craftsmen and merchants continued their trade, their livelihoods tied to the rhythms of the city's markets. Priests and monks lit candles in the Hagia Sophia, their prayers rising like incense into the vast dome above. But there was an unease in the air, a sense that the city's days of peace were numbered. Across the Bosphorus, Sultan Mehmed II was preparing for war. At just 21 years old, Mehmed had already earned a reputation as a brilliant and ambitious leader. His vision was clear: to take Constantinople and make it the jewel of his empire. Mehmed's preparations were meticulous. He had assembled a vast army, drawing soldiers from across his domains. His forces included the fearsome Janissaries, an elite corps of warriors known for their discipline and skill. He had also commissioned the construction of a massive cannon, capable of hurling stones weighing hundreds of pounds against the city's walls. This cannon, the brainchild of a Hungarian engineer named Orban, was unlike anything the world had seen before. As the days of spring turned into weeks, the people of Constantinople watched the horizon with growing apprehension. From the towers of the Theodosian walls, they could see the activity across the straits: Ottoman soldiers drilling, ships gathering, and siege engines being prepared. The sense of an impending storm grew stronger with each passing day. And yet, the city carried on. In the quiet moments, there was hope, a hope that the walls, which had protected Constantinople for 1,000 years, would hold once more, a hope that the prayers offered in the Hagia Sophia would be answered, a hope that the spirit of the city, forged in resilience and faith, would prevail. It is in this moment, on the brink of a great and inevitable confrontation, that we find Constantinople, a city poised between the past and the future, its fate intertwined with the ambitions of men and the tides of history. Take a moment to imagine it: the golden domes glistening in the sunlight, the narrow streets alive with whispers of hope and fear, and the towering walls standing as silent sentinels over a city that had endured for a millennium. The air is heavy with the promise of change, and the stage is set for one of history's most dramatic moments. Chapter 2: The Rise of the Ottoman Empire. Far beyond the walls of Constantinople, across the Anatolian plains and into the heart of the Eastern Mediterranean, a new power was rising. This was the Ottoman Empire, a force that had grown from humble beginnings into one of the most formidable states the world had ever seen. Its ascent was relentless, marked by military might, strategic brilliance, and the vision of its leaders. To understand the events that would culminate in the fall of Constantinople, we must first step back and explore the roots of the Ottomans, Imagine, if you will, the rugged landscapes of Anatolia in the late 13th century. It was here, amidst the chaos of the crumbling Seljuk Empire, that a small group of Turkish warriors established a principality under the leadership of Osman Torfurs. From his name, the dynasty and the empire would take their title, Ottoman. At first, the Ottomans were but one of many competing factions in Anatolia. Yet they possessed something unique, a combination of adaptability, ambition, and military prowess that allowed them to expand steadily. They forged alliances, incorporated conquered peoples into their ranks, and adopted technologies and ideas that strengthened their position. Over the decades, their territories grew, spreading into the Balkans and encircling Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire. By the early 15th century, the Ottomans had become a dominant power in the region. Under the leadership of Sultan Murad II, they consolidated their control over vast swaths of land, from modern-day Greece to parts of the Middle East. Yet, for all their success, one goal remained elusive: the capture of Constantinople. The city's strategic and symbolic significance was not lost on the Ottomans. It controlled key trade routes, linking the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. It was a cultural and religious center, representing the legacy of the Roman Empire and the strength of Christianity in the East. For the Ottomans, its conquest would not only secure their dominance, but also cement their place in history. When Sultan Mehmed II ascended the throne in 1451 at the age of 19, he inherited this vision. Mehmed was no ordinary ruler. Born into privilege, but raised with discipline, he was a man of immense intellect and ambition. Fluent in multiple languages and well-versed in history, geography, and military strategy, Mehmed possessed a restless energy that drove him to achieve what his predecessors could not. From the moment he became sultan, Mehmed turned his attention to Constantinople. He understood that capturing the city would require more than brute force. It would demand careful planning, innovative tactics, and an unshakable determination. To prepare for the coming siege, he began by consolidating his power, ensuring the loyalty of his generals and governors, and strengthening his army. Imagine the bustling camps of the Ottoman forces in the years leading up to 1453. Soldiers trained relentlessly, their drills a testament to the discipline that defined the Ottoman military. Engineers experimented with siege engines and artillery, refining the tools that would be critical in the assault on Constantinople. Ships were constructed to bolster the Ottoman fleet, preparing for a coordinated attack by land and sea. Among Mehmed's most significant preparations was the construction of a fortress on the European side of the Bosphorus, just a few miles north of Constantinople. Known as Rumeli Hisar, or the Fortress of Europe, this stronghold was built with astonishing speed, its walls rising in less than 4 months. The fortress allowed the Ottomans to control the strait, cutting off Constantinople's access to aid from the Black Sea. But perhaps the most striking symbol of Mehmed's determination was the massive cannon he commissioned. Designed by a Hungarian engineer named Orban, this cannon was a marvel of engineering, capable of hurling projectiles weighing hundreds of pounds over great distances. It was unlike anything the world had seen before, and its very existence signaled Mehmed's intention to shatter the legendary walls of Constantinople. As these preparations unfolded, the Byzantine Empire watched with growing unease. Within the walls of Constantinople, Emperor Constantine V Palaiologos worked tirelessly to ready his city for the inevitable. Yet the Byzantines faced immense challenges. Their resources were limited, their population had dwindled, and their allies in Western Europe were hesitant to provide meaningful support. The emperor sent urgent appeals for help, but the response was slow and uncertain. Meanwhile, Mehmed continued to rally his forces. His army was a diverse and formidable host, composed of soldiers from across his empire. Among them were the Janissaries, an elite corps of warriors trained from childhood to serve the Sultan. Clad in distinctive uniforms and renowned for their discipline and skill, the Janissaries were the backbone of Mehmed's military machine. Picture the Ottoman army gathering on the plains outside Constantinople, their ranks stretching as far as the eye could see. Infantrymen, armed with swords and spears, stood alongside archers and cavalry. Siege engines loomed in the background, their wooden frames a stark contrast to the shimmering armor of the soldiers. The air buzzed with anticipation as the army prepared for the campaign that would define Mehmed's reign. By early 1453, everything was in place. The Ottoman fleet, consisting of more than 100 ships, assembled in the waters around Constantinople. The army, numbering perhaps 80,000 to 100,000 men, marched toward the city, the banners fluttering in the spring breeze, and Mehmed himself, young and determined, rode at the head of his forces, his eyes fixed on the prize that had eluded his predecessors. On April 6th, 1453, the siege of Constantinople began. It was a moment that had been years in the making, the culmination of Mehmed's vision and the Ottoman Empire's relentless rise. The city's defenders braced themselves for the onslaught, knowing that they faced a foe unlike any they had encountered before. For now, let us pause and reflect on this turning point in history. Imagine the tension in the air as the Ottoman banners approached the walls of Constantinople. Picture the determination of Sultan Mehmed, a young ruler on the brink of achieving greatness, and the resolve of Emperor Constantine V, a leader fighting for the survival of his city and his people. The siege had begun, and the fate of Constantinople, its walls, its people, and its legacy hung in the balance. Chapter 3. The Siege Begins. The morning of April 6, 1453, dawned with a sense of inevitability. As the sun's first rays illuminated the towering walls of Constantinople, the great Ottoman army assembled outside the city's gates. Thousands of soldiers stood in disciplined ranks, their armor glinting in the light. Siege engines loomed in the background, casting long shadows over the plains. The silence was almost reverent, broken only by the occasional creak of wood or the low hum of distant voices. Inside the city, the people of Constantinople stirred from uneasy sleep. For weeks, they had watched the Ottoman forces draw closer, their numbers swelling with each passing day. Now, the siege had begun. Fear mingled with resolve as soldiers took their positions on the walls. Priests offered prayers in the Hagia Sophia, and ordinary citizens prepared themselves for a fight that would determine the fate of their city. Sultan Mehmed II, seated atop a magnificent warhorse, surveyed the scene before him. The young ruler had spent years preparing for this moment, and now it was here. He had brought with him an army of unparalleled strength. Tens of thousands of infantry, cavalry and the elite janissaries, as well as engineers and siege experts. His navy, numbering over 100 ships, controlled the waters around Constantinople, ensuring that no aid could reach the beleaguered city. And at the center of his arsenal stood the massive cannon commissioned from the Hungarian engineer Orban, a weapon designed to shatter the unshatterable, the Theodosian walls. Imagine the scale of this endeavor. The Ottoman army was not just an assembly of soldiers. It was a carefully orchestrated machine. Engineers worked tirelessly to position artillery along the city's perimeter, building platforms and fortifications to support the heavy cannons. Supplies flowed steadily into the camp, ensuring that the army remained well fed and well equipped. Tents stretched as far as the eye could see, their colors marking the divisions within the army. And in the heart of the camp stood Mehmed's command tent, a symbol of authority and ambition. The first act of the siege was a demonstration of power. Mehmed ordered his artillery to fire upon the walls, sending a message to the defenders that their time was running out. The ground trembled as the massive cannon roared to life, its projectile, a boulder weighing over 600 pounds, hurtling through the air toward the city. The impact was deafening, a cacophony of splintering stone and shouts from the walls. Yet the Theodosian walls stood firm, their ancient masonry absorbing the force of the assault. For the defenders, this was both a relief and a warning. The walls had held, for now. Emperor Constantine XV, clad in armor and leading his men from the front, moved quickly to bolster the city's defenses. He ordered his engineers to repair the damage inflicted by the cannon, using whatever materials they could find. Stone, wood, and even rubble were pressed into service, creating makeshift reinforcements that would buy the defenders precious time. Constantine's forces were few, perhaps 7,000 men in total, including mercenaries and volunteers from Genoa and Venice. Among them was Giovanni Giustiniani, a seasoned Genoese commander who had arrived with a contingent of well-trained soldiers. Giustiniani's expertise in siege warfare proved invaluable, and his presence bolstered the morale of the defenders. Together, they worked tirelessly to fortify the city's weak points, their determination fueled by a shared belief in the sanctity of Constantinople. As the days turned into weeks, the siege intensified. The Ottoman artillery unleashed a relentless barrage, pounding the walls day and night. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder, and the ground shook with each detonation. Yet, the defenders held their ground. From the battlements, they launched counterattacks, firing arrows and hurling stones at the besiegers below. They poured boiling oil and quicklime onto those who ventured too close, their ingenuity and resourcefulness a testament to their resolve. The Golden Horn, the great natural harbor that bordered the northern side of the city, became a key battleground. The Byzantines had stretched a massive iron chain across its entrance, preventing Ottoman ships from entering. This barrier, combined with the skill of the Byzantine and Genoese sailors, kept the Ottoman navy at bay for a time. Mehmed, however, was not one to be deterred by such obstacles. He devised an audacious plan to bypass the chain by transporting his ships over land. Imagine the scene: Ottoman soldiers and engineers, working under cover of darkness, laid wooden planks and rollers across the hilly terrain north of the Golden Horn. Over these makeshift roads, they hauled dozens of ships, dragging them through groves and fields until they reached the waters beyond the chain. By dawn, the ships were in position, and the defenders of Constantinople awoke to find the Ottoman navy inside the Golden Horn. It was a brilliant maneuver, one that demonstrated Mehmed's ingenuity and willingness to defy convention. Within the city, the defenders were stretched to their limits. Food and supplies grew scarce, and the constant bombardment took its toll on morale. Yet they continued to fight. In the Hagia Sophia, priests led processions and prayers, calling upon divine intervention to save the city. The people, though weary, clung to hope, a hope that reinforcements from the west might arrive in time to turn the tide. But help was slow in coming. The Catholic powers of Europe, divided by politics and rivalries, hesitated to commit their forces. Pope Nicholas V sent envoys to rally support, but the response was lukewarm. A handful of ships from Venice and Genoa made their way to Constantinople, carrying supplies and reinforcements, but they were not enough to change the course of the siege. The Byzantines were alone. Meanwhile, the Ottomans pressed their advantage. Mehmed ordered his engineers to construct tunnels beneath the walls, attempting to undermine the city's foundations. These efforts were met with fierce resistance from the defenders, who dug counter tunnels to intercept and collapse the enemy's works. It was a battle fought in darkness, a silent struggle beneath the earth that mirrored the chaos above. As April gave way to May, the siege reached a fever pitch. The walls, battered and scarred, bore the marks of countless assaults. The defenders, their numbers dwindling, fought with the desperation of those who knew their lives and their city were at stake. And yet, for all their courage, the odds were overwhelming. Outside the walls, the Ottoman camp buzzed with activity. Soldiers prepared for the final assault, sharpening their weapons and donning their armor. Mehmed, ever the strategist, refined his plans, ensuring that every aspect of the attack was coordinated. The great cannon was repositioned, its muzzle aimed at a vulnerable section of the walls. The Sultan's advisors urged caution, but Mehmed was resolute. The time for Constantinople had come. And so, as the city's defenders lit their lanterns and prayed in the fading light of day, the Ottoman army stood ready to strike. The siege had entered its final phase, and the fate of Constantinople hung by a thread. For now, let us pause and reflect on the courage and ingenuity of those who fought on both sides of this historic conflict. Imagine the tireless efforts of the defenders, patching their walls and manning their posts despite exhaustion and despair. Picture the determination of the besiegers, driven by the vision of their young sultan. The siege was a battle not just of armies, but of wills, a contest that would soon reach its dramatic conclusion. Chapter 4: The Final Days of the Siege. As the days of May unfolded, the tension within and beyond Constantinople's walls grew unbearable. Both the defenders and the besiegers knew that the siege was nearing its climax. The air was thick with the sounds of preparation, wooden beams creaking under the weight of siege engines, the clanging of hammers forging weapons, and the murmur of prayers rising from within the great Hagia Sophia. The walls of Constantinople, though battered, still stood. For nearly 2 months, the defenders had withstood the unrelenting bombardment of the Ottoman artillery, repairing breaches under the cover of darkness and holding their ground against repeated assaults. Yet the strain was beginning to show. Supplies were running dangerously low, and the defenders, outnumbered and exhausted, knew that they could not hold out indefinitely. Emperor Constantine V Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor, moved among his men, offering words of encouragement and leading by example. Clad in armor and carrying the weight of 1,000 years of history on his shoulders, he was a symbol of resilience and determination. To the people of Constantinople, he was more than a ruler. He was their defender, a leader willing to fight and, if necessary, die for his city. Outside the walls, Sultan Mehmed II prepared for the final assault. The young Sultan, though still in his early 20s, displayed a level of determination and strategic insight that belied his age. For weeks, he had tested Constantinople's defenses, probing for weaknesses and refining his plans. Now, he was ready to bring the siege to its conclusion. Imagine the Ottoman camp on the eve of the final assault. Tents stretched as far as the eye could see, their banners fluttering in the night breeze. Fires burned brightly, casting flickering shadows over the assembled soldiers. The Janissaries, the elite corps of the Ottoman army, stood ready, their discipline and resolve unmatched. Artillery crews tended to the massive cannons, ensuring that they were primed for the attack. And in the heart of the camp, Mehmed himself conferred with his advisors, finalizing the details of the assault. The night before the final assault, May 28, 1453, was a night of prayer and reflection on both sides. Within the walls of Constantinople, the people gathered in the Hagia Sophia, seeking solace and strength in their faith. The great church, its dome illuminated by the soft glow of countless candles, was filled with the sound of hymns and prayers. It was a moment of unity, as soldiers, citizens, and clergy came together to place their fate in the hands of God. Meanwhile, in the Ottoman camp, Mehmed addressed his troops. He spoke of the glory that awaited them, of the riches they would gain, and of the honor of fulfilling a destiny foretold by their ancestors. His words inspired his men, filling them with a sense of purpose and determination. The final assault, he told them, would be swift and decisive. As the first light of dawn broke on May 29, 1453, the Ottoman army surged forward. Waves of soldiers advanced on the walls, their battle cries filling the air. The great cannon roared to life, its thunderous blast shaking the ground as it hurled massive projectiles at the city's defenses. The Janissaries, leading the charge, moved with precision and discipline, their advance relentless. From the walls, the defenders fought with everything they had. Arrows flew through the air, and stones rained down on the attackers. Boiling oil and quicklime were poured onto those who reached the base of the walls, their cries of pain echoing across the battlefield. Yet, for all their courage and ingenuity, the defenders were stretched to their limits. The key moment came when a breach was made in the Theodosian walls. After weeks of relentless bombardment, a section of the inner wall crumbled, creating an opening through which the Ottoman forces poured. Chaos erupted as the defenders rushed to repel the attackers, fighting desperately to hold the line. It was in this moment of chaos that Constantine made his final stand. The emperor, refusing to abandon his city, fought alongside his men, his sword flashing in the sunlight. Accounts of his death differ. Some say he was struck down by an enemy blade, while others suggest he removed his imperial regalia and charged into the fray, dying as a common soldier. What is certain is that Constantine fell defending his city, his bravery and sacrifice etched into the annals of history. With the walls breached and the emperor fallen, the defense of Constantinople collapsed. Ottoman soldiers surged into the city, their victory assured. Fires broke out as looting began, and the streets of Constantinople were filled with the sounds of triumph and despair. The great Hagia Sophia, which had been a place of solace and sanctuary just hours earlier, was now a symbol of the city's fall. Ottoman forces entered the church, marking the end of its time as a Christian cathedral and the beginning of its transformation into a mosque. Sultan Mehmed II entered the city later that day, his triumph complete. He made his way to the Hagia Sophia, where he offered prayers, declaring the city to be the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine world, was now Istanbul, the heart of a new era. For the people of Constantinople, the fall of their city was both an end and a beginning. Many were taken captive, their lives forever changed by the events of that fateful day. Yet, even in the midst of loss, there was resilience. The spirit of Constantinople lived on in its people, its culture, and its enduring legacy. Take a moment to reflect on these final hours. Picture the defenders on the walls, their courage undiminished even in the face of overwhelming odds. Imagine the determination of Mehmed and his men, driven by a vision of conquest and destiny. And think of the city itself, its ancient stones bearing witness to the end of one era and the beginning of another. The siege was over, and Constantinople had fallen, but its story was far from finished. Chapter 5: The Fall of Constantinople. May 29th, 1453, would be remembered as the day when the ancient walls of Constantinople, which had stood for more than 1,000 years, finally gave way. The Byzantine Empire, the last vestige of Rome's legacy, came to an end as Sultan Mehmed II claimed the city as his own. The fall of Constantinople marked not only the conclusion of a siege, but also the turning of a page in history, a moment that would reverberate across the world. In the hours following the breach of the Theodosian walls, the city descended into chaos. Ottoman soldiers poured into Constantinople through the broken defenses, their cries of victory mingling with the shouts and wails of its citizens. Fires broke out in multiple quarters of the city, their flames consuming homes, markets, and places of worship. Smoke hung heavy in the air, casting an eerie pall over the streets. For the citizens of Constantinople, the sight was unimaginable. Many had placed their hopes in the strength of the walls, in the prayers offered within the Hagia Sophia, and in the leadership of Emperor Constantine III. Now, those hopes lay shattered. The city that had withstood so many sieges in the past had fallen, and its people faced an uncertain and perilous future. Imagine the fear and desperation of those who sought refuge within the Hagia Sophia. The great cathedral, its immense dome, a symbol of divine protection, became the final sanctuary for thousands of men, women, and children. As the Ottoman forces approached, the prayers of the faithful rose in unison, filling the vast space with a chorus of hope and despair. For many, this was their last act of devotion, a plea for deliverance that would not come. When the Ottoman soldiers reached the Hagia Sophia, they burst through its doors, bringing the chaos of conquest into the sacred space. The sanctuary that had witnessed centuries of coronations, celebrations, and solemn prayers now became a scene of looting and capture. The grandeur of the mosaics, the glow of the candles, and the echoes of hymns gave way to the tumult of voices and the clatter of boots on stone. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Sultan Mehmed II made his entrance. Riding through the broken gates and into the heart of Constantinople, the young sultan surveyed his prize. For Mehmed, this was not merely a military victory. It was the fulfillment of a vision, a conquest that placed him among history's greatest leaders. Yet, even in triumph, he carried himself with a measured dignity. He ordered his men to cease the destruction and looting, declaring that the city would now be the capital of his empire. One of Mehmed's first acts was to visit the Hagia Sophia. Standing beneath its soaring dome, he offered prayers of gratitude, marking the building's transformation into a mosque. This act symbolized the city's transition from a Christian stronghold to an Islamic capital, a transformation that would define its identity for centuries to come. As the day wore on, the magnitude of the conquest became clear. The Byzantine Empire, once a dominant force in the Mediterranean, had been reduced to memories and monuments. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of an era, the final chapter of the Roman world. For Europe, it was a moment of profound shock and mourning. The city that had stood as a bastion of Christendom had fallen to the Ottomans, and with it, the Eastern Roman Empire had ceased to exist. Yet, in the midst of loss, there were seeds of transformation. For the Ottoman Empire, the conquest of Constantinople was the beginning of a new chapter. Sultan Mehmed II, who would become known as Mehmed the Conqueror, set about rebuilding and repurposing the city. He invited people from across his empire to settle in Constantinople, revitalizing its economy and repopulating its neighborhoods. Under his leadership, the city became a vibrant and diverse capital, renamed Istanbul, a center of culture, trade, and governance. Imagine the transformation of the city in the months and years following the conquest. The streets that had echoed with the sounds of battle began to hum with the activity of merchants, craftsmen, and traders. New buildings rose alongside ancient ones, blending Byzantine and Ottoman styles into a unique architectural landscape. The Hagia Sophia, now a mosque, became a symbol of the synthesis, its minarets adding to its majestic profile. The fall of Constantinople also had far-reaching consequences beyond the city itself. For Europe, it was a wake-up call, a moment that underscored the rising power of the Ottoman Empire. The loss of the city disrupted trade routes to the east, prompting European nations to seek new pathways to Asia, a quest that would ultimately lead to the age of exploration. For the Islamic world, the conquest of Constantinople was a moment of triumph and unity. It demonstrated the strength of the Ottoman Empire and its ability to challenge the powers of Europe. The city, with its strategic location and rich history, became a jewel in the crown of the Ottoman sultans, a testament to their vision and ambition. Yet, even as Constantinople became Istanbul, the memory of its Byzantine past endured. The city's monuments, its traditions, and its spirit were not erased. they became part of a new narrative, one that blended the legacies of East and West, Christianity and Islam, old and new. Take a moment to reflect on the enormity of this transformation. Picture the streets of Istanbul in the years after the conquest, bustling with life and activity, yet still carrying the echoes of Byzantium. Imagine the people, those who remained, those who arrived, and those who rebuilt, creating a city that was both ancient and modern, a place where history and progress met. The fall of Constantinople was the end of one empire and the beginning of another. It was a moment of profound loss and remarkable renewal, a turning point that shaped the course of history. For now, let us pause and remember the people who lived through this extraordinary event, the soldiers who fought on both sides, the citizens who sought refuge, and the leaders who made decisions that would change the world. Their stories remind us that history is not merely the story of triumphs and defeats. It is the story of resilience, transformation, and the enduring human spirit. Chapter 6: The Legacy of the Fall. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 marked the end of an era, but it also signaled the beginning of something new. This moment, as momentous as it was devastating, left a legacy that continues to echo through history. A legacy shaped by resilience, transformation, and the enduring influence of a city that had stood at the crossroads of the world. For the Ottoman Empire, the conquest of Constantinople was a crowning achievement. Sultan Mehmed II, now forever known as Mehmed the Conqueror, had accomplished what many before him could not. Under his vision, Constantinople was transformed into Istanbul, the capital of a sprawling empire that would dominate the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and parts of Europe for centuries. Imagine the city in the decades after the conquest. The scars of the siege gradually faded as Mehmed's vision took shape. He rebuilt the walls, repaired damaged infrastructure, and repurposed Byzantine landmarks for Ottoman use. The Hagia Sophia, once the spiritual heart of Orthodox Christianity, became a mosque, its interior adorned with Islamic calligraphy, and its exterior crowned with towering minarets. Yet its Byzantine mosaics, though covered, were preserved, a testament to Mehmed's respect for the city's history. Mehmed also sought to revitalize the population of Istanbul. He invited people from across the Ottoman Empire to settle in the city, creating a diverse and vibrant community. Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and Muslims lived and worked side by side, their cultures blending into a unique tapestry that defined Istanbul's character. The city became a hub of trade, art, and scholarship, its streets alive with the energy of renewal. Beyond Istanbul, the fall of Constantinople had profound implications for the world. In Europe, the event sent shockwaves through Christian kingdoms. The loss of the great Byzantine stronghold, long seen as a buffer against Islamic expansion, was a sobering reminder of the Ottoman Empire's growing power. It spurred calls for a renewed crusade, though these efforts would never fully materialize. Yet the fall also prompted Europe to look outward. The disruption of trade routes to the east, now under Ottoman control, encouraged European explorers to seek new paths to Asia. This quest would lead to the Age of Exploration, a period of unprecedented maritime discovery that reshaped the global economy and expanded the horizons of European powers. In this way, the fall of Constantinople indirectly set the stage for the rise of the modern world. For the Islamic world, The conquest of Constantinople was a moment of triumph. It solidified the Ottoman Empire's status as a dominant power and positioned Istanbul as a center of Islamic culture and governance. The city became a beacon of scholarship and art, its institutions attracting poets, scientists, and architects from across the empire. The Ottoman sultans, heirs to Mehmet's vision, continued to expand their influence, building one of history's most enduring empires. Yet, even as the Byzantine Empire faded, its legacy endured. Byzantium had been a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds, preserving the knowledge of Greece and Rome during the Dark Ages of Europe. Its scholars, many of whom fled to the West after the fall, carried with them manuscripts and ideas that fueled the Renaissance. The art, philosophy, and theology of Byzantium became part of the foundation upon which modern Europe was built. The city of Constantinople itself remained a symbol of resilience. Its walls, though breached, had stood for over 1,000 years, defending the city against countless enemies. Its monuments, from the Hagia Sophia to the aqueducts and cisterns that sustained its people, were marvels of engineering and artistry. Even in its fall, Constantinople left behind a legacy of ingenuity and endurance. Take a moment to reflect on the timelessness of this city. Picture the golden mosaics of the Hagia Sophia, their light soft and enduring, as if untouched by the passing centuries. Imagine the bustling markets of Istanbul, their stalls filled with goods from across the Ottoman Empire. The city, reborn yet ancient, stands as a testament to the resilience of human creativity and ambition. The fall of Constantinople also marked a shift in the balance of power between East and West. The Ottoman Empire, now centered in Istanbul, became a bridge between the two worlds, influencing trade, culture, and politics. At the same time, Europe, spurred by the loss of Byzantium, began to chart its own course toward exploration and conquest. These parallel developments reshaped the world, creating a global network of exchange and interaction. For the people who lived through the fall, the legacy was deeply personal. The citizens of Constantinople, whether they fled, were taken captive, or chose to remain, carried with them memories of the city's grandeur and its fall. Their stories, passed down through generations, preserved the human side of this monumental event, the courage of the defenders, the sorrow of the survivors, and the vision of those who rebuilt. Even today, the legacy of Constantinople lives on. Its influence can be seen in the architecture of Istanbul, in the art and literature of the Renaissance, and in the enduring fascination with its history. The city's story is a reminder that even in moments of great loss, there is the potential for renewal and transformation. As we bring this story to a close, let us take one final moment to reflect on the fall of Constantinople. Imagine the sunrise over the Bosphorus, its golden light washing over the city's domes and towers. Hear the echoes of voices, Byzantine and Ottoman, Christian and Muslim, blending into a chorus that tells the story of a city that was never truly silenced. The fall of Constantinople was not just an end, it was a beginning. It was the end of the Byzantine Empire and the ancient world it represented. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter in history, one that would shape the world we know today. Its legacy is one of resilience, transformation, and the enduring power of human ambition and creativity. This is the story of Constantinople, a city that stood at the crossroads of history, a city whose spirit continues to inspire, and a city whose fall reminds us of the eternal cycle of endings and beginnings. Conclusion. And so, we arrive at the end of this journey through history, a journey that began with the mighty walls of Constantinople, standing tall and resolute, and ends with the city transformed into a vibrant new capital of a rising empire. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was more than a moment in time. It was a turning point that reshaped the world, leaving a legacy of profound change and timeless inspiration. For over 1,000 years, Constantinople had stood as a beacon of strength, culture, and faith. Its walls had repelled invaders, its markets had linked continents, and its churches had offered solace and splendor to generations of worshippers. When it fell, it marked the end of an era, the close of the Byzantine Empire, and the final chapter of the ancient Roman world. Yet, history is rarely a story of pure endings. The fall of Constantinople was also a beginning, a moment of renewal and transformation that set the stage for the Ottoman Empire's golden age, the rise of European exploration, and the spread of ideas that would fuel the Renaissance. It was a reminder that even in the face of loss, humanity finds ways to rebuild, to adapt, and to thrive. The city itself, now known as Istanbul, stands as a living testament to this resilience. Its streets are alive with the echoes of its past, its monuments blending the grandeur of Byzantium with the artistry of the Ottomans. From the towering minarets of the Hagia Sophia to the bustling bazaars that link east and west, Istanbul continues to tell the story of a city that has never lost its place at the crossroads of the world. Take a moment to reflect on the timeless lessons of this story, the courage of those who defended Constantinople, the vision of those who rebuilt it, and the enduring spirit of a city that has stood at the heart of history for centuries. Remind us of the power of resilience and transformation. Close your eyes and imagine the sun setting over the Bosphorus, its golden light illuminating the domes and towers of Istanbul. The waters ripple gently, carrying whispers of the past to distant shores. The city, ancient yet eternal, stands as a symbol of the enduring cycle of history, of endings that give way to new beginnings. Let this story carry you into a place of quiet reflection. Think of the countless lives, great and small, that shaped this moment in time, and the legacy they left behind. And as the echoes of Constantinople fade into the night, may its tale bring you peace and inspiration. Good night.